Okay, so I'm going to start a little project today. This is the fireplace that I have downstairs in the kitchen living space. I don't mind it, even though I have air conditioning system in the house. I still think it's nice to have a fireplace. It's just the woody smell of fire during winter. I think it's a nice thing to have. Is it practical with an open sort of fireplace like this? Probably not. Fireplaces do create a fair bit of sort of black sooty dust in a house. So the question is, will I use it? Probably not. Do I want to take it out of the house? No. Will it make more room if I take it out of the house for the kitchen? Yes. But I think it's a nice feature to keep in the house. So I'm going to keep it. Now the previous owners have painted the bricks. There's like a terracotta under here that you can sort of see it here. I've scraped off a bit of the paint, but there's a terracotta brick in there with concrete in between, and so the previous owners probably trying to either, I don't know, make it look better or in their eyes, I'm not sure, but they've painted this in a brown, and they've also painted the mortar gaps in between. I think the fireplace is quite heavy in this space here. It's a very small space, so I just, and the brickwork is already painted. I'm not going to go through the task of removing all the paint and exposing the terracotta brick. And since I'm probably not going to use the fireplace, I think I just want it to sort of blend in with the remaining walls of the house. I still like the brick pattern. So what I'm going to do now is just scrape off any flaking paint on the brick that's on there now, and then stop that alarm. Scrape any paint off there. Probably give it a good brush with a sort of a bit of a steel brush. And then I'm probably just going to prime it with a white paint and just have a look at it and see what it looks like. And I think in the center here, where there's just a bit of firewood there, I'll probably just cut a few pieces of wood and make that look somewhat presentable in there. If you look up a bit further, there's a flute that goes right up. And that flute and a bit of a mantle with a marble sort of mantle above the fireplace. That flute goes right up through the bedroom upstairs and apparently heats the bedroom up when the fireplace is on as well. So it's not a terrible thing. I'm going to keep it. I think it's a nice little feature in the living space. So let's just see how it works out. Let's give it a go. Now, the paint at the bottom is coming off a lot more in this bottom area here, and I think it's because there's a bit of rising damp that's coming up through these lower 3 or 4 courses here. So the paint is coming off a lot easier. Whereas here, it seems to be intact a lot more, which is good, which means less scraping, and I can just paint over that surface. Now I understand why they've painted over these bricks. It's because the rising damp was probably coming up and there was probably a fair bit of I would say salty residue coming out of the bricks. And they probably didn't like that, so they tried to cover it up with paint. You can see here just like how shiny it actually looks, and it's essentially it looks fake. So I don't like that. I think it'll look a lot better once it's painted out to blend with the rest of the space through here. Okay, so I've just given that a pretty good scrape down all the way across. As I said before, the first 3 or 4 courses has the rising damp, and that's where a lot of the paint came off quite easily. I'm not too worried about having a perfect finish. I think once it's all painted in one colour, it doesn't bother me if the brickwork has imperfections all over it. In fact, I prefer that. So I've just given it a quick sweep up because it did get quite dusty, and a lot of this adjoining wall here also has rising damp, which means, for example, here you can see some of the actual mortar between the bricks has actually popped out as well because it was quite fragile. And clearly behind this, and I can hear this wall here is quite drummy. Do I want to dig that out? Probably not. But essentially on that wall there, which is the southern wall, I think there's the house next door, which the level of that house sits further up, which means any rising damp up through next door is potentially coming through to my place through here. Anyway, that's all scraped back. Essentially what I want to do now really is get a brush or some sort of wire brush and give it a good scratch all over. I'm going to have to head to the hardware to do that. So that's potentially an afternoon job because we're already around lunchtime, and there's a 3-hour lunch break in Italy. So it's an afternoon job. But what I can do in between is probably clean up these top bricks, get the dust off them, and maybe just put on a bit of white primer and just on this top section and just have a look at what it actually looks like. Let's give that a go. Just a bit of black soot from the fireplace actually getting used, so just taking that off the brickwork before I give it a bit of a paint. Quite nice to clean because it's a painted surface, so it's actually quite smooth and lovely to eat. Well, so there we go. That answers that question, why the Italians, previous owners, painted the brickwork. Because it was easier to clean. Now I understand. So if anyone knows what it's like to grow up in an Italian household, there's a there's an OCD that comes with Italian culture when it comes to cleaning, and this makes perfect sense now. Anyway, we're painting the surface. If it ever does get used as a fireplace, it's going to be easy to clean. So, all right, I'll just get the paint out and give it a quick go over and see what it looks like. Actually, that's still a bit wet. I'm just going to dry it.